You know what I noticed after years of working in corporate and now having struck out on my own, being a full-time content creator, running a coaching business, is a concerning but undeniable truth that the gifted, the capable often get outpaced by the consistent and compelling. I don't like that this is true, but it's way too true. And in this video, we are going to get to the bottom of how we can flip and reverse that, because I believe that in one way or another you clicked on this because you know you are too gifted to be under earning. That you know if you are building a coaching business or some sort of helping professional, that you are too gifted to be the world's best kept secret, that you are too gifted to not have a thriving oversubscribed business or side hustle if that is something that you want. And I've noticed that this issue of, again, the consistent and the compelling outpacing the gifted tends to be so true. And so in this video, we're going to understand why this is. I'm going to explore what I call the gifted person's trap. And then we're going to identify the two nervous system patterns that we get to break in service of getting our gifts on par with the income and impact we're here to make. And I'm gonna do an honest look at what's helped me and a lot of clients I've been around get to a point where they are consistent where it counts, so that they attract the right clients and opportunities, so that the right people are happy to say, yes, sign me up for that. Yes, I want to pay you. This is life-changing stuff. I wish I'd learned sooner. So, you know that feeling of being in corporate environments and you see that person who isn't that good, isn't that smart, just plow their way to the top because they are consistently brazen and bold. They take up a lot of space. They ask for what they want. When conversations about promotions come up, that person's name is mentioned first because they make themselves known everywhere they go. Okay? On top of that, they are irresistibly compelling because they carry themselves with an air of conviction. An R of conviction. And so I saw this to be true in corporate spaces, and it irked me. And then I move into running my own coaching business, building up a practice from nothing to something, and we're doing awesome things inside Final Notice. I get to a point of figuring out content creation and dialing in my marketing, and I realized something similar in the business world that I noticed in the corporate world, which is that that sort of person who's got that bulldozer way about them, who may not be that smart, may not be that gifted, tends to get the lion's share of opportunities because they are consistent where it counts and because they are compelling. What does that mean? In other words, they know how to articulate their value well. In other words, they know how to say things in a way that makes people say, hell yeah, sign me up for that. I want whatever you have to offer. And details on a workshop I'm hosting soon to support you with being consistent where it counts and irresistible in communicating the value you deliver. Resources down below. So how do we get to a point where we embody more of this consistent where it counts and irresistible energy? Because I hate witnessing a world where the gifted are often overlooked. The competent are often overlooked. And why is it that we fall into this trap of being overlooked? I call it the gifted person's trap. So there's this concept called the Dunning-Kruger effect, wherein the more you don't know about a subject, the more you doubt yourself and underestimate your abilities. And that comes from a healthy place sometimes of, okay, I want to be working on things. I don't want to be overconfident. But where it can also lead you is to not do the necessary work to get clear and compelling in how you carry yourself and how you communicate your value to the world. And I fell into this trap for a while in my business, which kept clients at bay, opportunities at bay, because I wasn't that great at clearly, compellingly articulating my value. Can you relate? Let me know down below, okay? So that's one of the gifted person's traps, the Dunning-Kruger effect, the coming off like you aren't sure of yourself because you know how much you don't know. That can be part of it. Another part of the gifted person's trap is that we can defer doing in service of planning and thinking about it, right? Another part of the gifted person's trap is that you can be quite sensitive and rejection sensitive to such an extent that when it comes to doing things like social media that would move your business forward, when it comes to doing things like promoting your work that would allow people to discover you and work with you as a client, right? You avoid certain things where you associate perceived rejection with that activity. Hello? Hello? Somebody get that? Yeah, I do. Okay. So these are just a few of the pitfalls we can stumble into as gifted people. And I've learned to call that the gifted person's trap. But this doesn't have to be the end of the story. That was certainly not the end of my story, because I got to a point after I left corporate, started building my coaching business, where I was frankly just very annoyed. I'll say even angry at times, to feel like, okay, I have evidence that I'm now good at what I'm doing here. I see my clients winning. Even before I started charging for coaching, I was that person who people would come to me for advice or encouragement or input about something, and on the heels of integrating and implementing some of what they learned from me, they're out here getting promotions. They're out here landing opportunities, big clients, right? And so I had evidence that, okay, I guess I'm not so bad at what I do, right? But how do I get consistent where it counts so I can generate leads and attract opportunities into my orbit? How do I articulate my value in a way that is so irresistible and compelling to the people I seek to serve that they're happy to sign up, that they're happy to pay? And when I unlock those two things, the money problem sorted itself out, and I stopped feeling like the jaded, gifted person who was the world's best kept secret, right? You can fall into that trap of feeling like the jaded, gifted person who was the world's best kept secret, or the overworked and underpaid gifted person, right? I also know people who are helping professionals building out coaching practices or consulting practices who are just burnt out working for agencies and within different organizations, and you know that to make the money you want to make on your terms, you've got to get good with putting yourself out there consistently, marketing, generating leads, and you've got to get good again at articulating your value. So we're going to hit on cracking the code on consistency and being irresistibly compelling. But before we get there, what nervous system roadblocks get in our way? Let's talk about it. So I've done other videos, you can check those out, where I talk about fight, flight, freeze, fawn. These are the primary forms of stress response that our nervous system defaults to when we are not regulated, okay? And what I've noticed is for a lot of gifted folks, a lot of gifted heart-centered business owners, visionaries, who fall into this trap of self-sabotage, of under-earning, of not attracting the caliber of clients and opportunities you want. Our most common default triggered TINA nervous system responses include freeze and fawn. Freeze and fawn. That in the face of, okay, I could be creating content or I could be more consistent with my marketing activities, but I'm not, we tend to freeze, right? Like the wounded animal or the prey animal that senses a lion just across the Serengeti trying to stalk us. We freeze in the face of this thing, this task that sits before us, right? And we self-sabotage as a result. I see it with a lot of clients who come into final notice where they're like, okay, I've been doing this coaching work for a long time and I just haven't been charging properly for it, or I haven't been charging at all for it because I don't believe when I don't believe in what I have to offer. I don't believe I deserve more, right? Or folks who are incredible at what they do and have built out relatively successful brick and mortar businesses offline, but they know that what would create the quantum leap in income and impact and make their life simpler is to get visible through algorithms and create content. And they're avoiding it, right? Because it feels unknown, it feels scary, it feels like a grind. This is all figure outable stuff, to paraphrase, quote, Marie Forleo. Okay, so there's the freeze response. And then there's also fawn response. Fawn is what? Fawn is where we make ourselves small, right? Where we make ourselves small in the face of what we perceive to be an imminent threat or danger. I had a client recently who was actually at a point where they said, okay, I realize that most of my life I've under-earned, that I have created a life where I've counted on other people to provide for me as a fawn response. You could call it learned helplessness. And so part of reclaiming their power looks like realizing, okay, I've been in this fawn response as a way to stay hyper dependent on others and shrink away from owning my power as this incredible transformative somatic healer that they are, right? And so they're making the necessary changes to own their power and get properly compensated for their gift. I repeat, I hate to see the gifted getting outpaced by the consistent and compelling. Let's get your consistency and your compelling essence on par with your gift. Okay? That's how we get paid. That's how we break cycles of burnout. That's how we overcome under-earning. That's how we do the awesome things that help us take care of the business of our business so we can get to living fully. And let me tell you, I'm living proof. I'm living proof, e-cousins. I'm living proof. And there are resources down below to support you with the next step. So how do we get to being consistent and compelling where it counts? I think about this in context of building your business, because a lot of folks around here are business minded or minimally starting a side hustle. I associate consistency with getting visible in the right ways that allow us to generate demand for what we do. Visible in the right ways that allow us to generate demand for what we do. People who witness you and say, I want more. I want to learn more about that. I want to give you my email. I want to follow you. I want to attend your program, your workshop. So the fuck? Right. Whatever that is for you. In business lingo, we are consistent with our visibility strategy so we can generate, drumroll, leads. This is how we build a business. Part. Okay? Got to get consistent where it counts so we can generate the big L word, leads. I generate a lot of my leads through Instagram. Use a little automation tool called ManyChat. Generate leads through YouTube, through Facebook. If I need to, I'll run some ads. But I've been organic up until this point, and that's gotten me pretty far. We've done 5-figure months organic, which is pretty cool. We got to dial in our content system, our visibility engine to be consistent where it counts. And I'll talk about the anatomy of this more in future videos. Mastering your visibility engine to generate leads. Got to do that. And then the other part, with regard to being compelling, we have to articulate our value in such a way that people are happy to pay us for what we do. Why did I say it like that? It's true. We've got to articulate our value in such a compelling way that folks are happy to part with their hard-earned money and pay you for what you do. Your therapy, your coaching, your consulting, your creative, etc., etc., etc. Okay? So first, we mentioned consistency. Why are we being consistent? We're being consistent within our business to generate leads. Make sure people know we exist. And then we are articulating our value clearly so we get paid. And how do we do that? We need an irresistible offer. We need a sales system. I'll break these two things down separately in future videos, but this is the bedrock of standing on business so that we can go from overlooked to overbooked, from underpaid to well-paid, to consistent, compelling, and gifted, because I am sick and tired of seeing horrible people crushing all these industries because the kind-hearted, gifted people aren't taking up space, aren't consistent where it counts, don't know how to articulate their value in a compelling, clear way. We're flipping and reversing it in this season because the world looks totally different when good-hearted, kind individuals with heart and soul own their power and make the money they need to make. Standing on business, period, cousins. Let me know what your experience was with this down in the comments. We'll talk soon. Again, join us. Workshop below. And other resources for free, all down below. Share with a friend if you found useful.